the clerk's report, 2.2, the background of the situation. Now, it says Councillor Wilson's name was the last name to be called out. And he voted for the motion to refuse. Now, we'd already heard the person who had put the motion forward to refuse. He knew what all that was about because we'd spoken about that in length. And that had been seconded, not right away, it was after discussion it had been seconded. So he knew those people, he was the last to vote. He knew those people, and they voted for. Now, if he was so concerned, he would have known to vote against. And that's a big problem with me, you know? And not only that, but he asked, it says here, Councillor Wilson asked the clerk for clarification of the vote. And the panel clerk read out the result of the named vote again. So there's no mistake here. You know, that vote was taken. If the Councillor Wilson obviously made a mistake as he didn't say it at the time, but it's left all of us in this situation where we're having to say, our chairman didn't lie, you know? And maybe he didn't, but we should not be here. We should not be here in this position. And I'm very, very saddened to say it's our chairman who's put us in this position. Because this should have been brought forward much, much earlier. I mean, here, I'm looking at, when I can get this thing working, our officers know I have problems with this thing. But I'm looking at a Twitter account sent on the 17th of December at 8:33 p.m. after the vote was taken on that night. On the Vickers Way car park application at RBWM will now take legal advice from a planning QC. We'll also understand the likely cost, both sides, from an appeal of the planning decision. A vote will then be taken by the Tories, Conservative, I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, yeah, ridiculous. So I'm looking at all this. I'm looking at what's gone on, and I am appalled that I have been put in this position. It's not fair on all our members here, you know, that sat at that panel. We heard what went on. You know, the clerk mentioned twice what the vote was for, refusal. I have to second Councillor Stretton just on that, and please don't anybody clap because I'm appalled that it's got this far.
Okay, Councillor Mrs Hunt. If I could just make the point that I did, in my statement, explain how I voted and why I voted and all of that. I have explained that. I cannot be held responsible for other councillors who may use other means of social media to inform. I cannot be responsible for their actions. I can only be responsible for my actions. And I have always been honest and fair, and when I felt that I made a mistake, I felt it was my duty to inform the monitoring officer and the head of planning that such a mistake had occurred. I mean, I've stated that within my statement, which I prepared yesterday at home. So, you know, I'm reading out exactly what I've written so that there's no ambiguity. And I'm sure that there have, as has already been pointed out, other panels that have operated within the Royal Borough that have equally made mistakes due to human error. It can happen. There's a lot going on when you're chairing a panel. There's a lot of information flying around. But I'd like to bring in our legal officer before we go for a vote.
It's just fact that I have been in that position myself where I made a mistake. And halfway through, I stood up and I said, well, I've made a mistake, I have a conflict of interest. It caused me great harassment and, and upset that I'd made that mistake and not realised up until that point. but I said it at that meeting. Now, the other mistakes that people have made, councillors, did they come forward days after, or was it at the meeting or the next day? I mean, that is relevant as well as what's gone on in the whole periphery. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I'll ask our legal officer to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to add just a little bit more context of this mistake. I've done these panels for the last 7 years. It's not the first time. You might be shocked that councillors do make mistakes. It happens. And with the I've watched the Periscope, and with the benefit of hindsight, I could have quite easily looked at that and gone, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? But it didn't. No, it would have been very easy for Councillor Will Wilson to kind of bury his head and just go, well, I don't want to admit I was wrong. Why don't I just kind of pretend it didn't happen? But he has come forward and done the proper thing and brought that to the monitoring officer's attention, and that's why we're here. We're trying to determine, or you're trying to determine, was this mistake made? Now, Councillor Wilson has done the right thing. He's put his hand up and said, I made a mistake. He has apologised and said, he's been a bit foolish about it, but I understand your position that at that time you did do that. If you look at the Periscope, it's slightly this, slightly different. No, and I think it was the right thing to do, to not, when the members of the public were leaving, when the panel members were wandering around the room, to suddenly go, sorry everybody, let's wait for the public to leave and then we'll have a vote. That's just my view, but I think to correct that mistake, that's why it's been brought back to this panel, so you can make a judgment on it. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think you have heard from the legal officer. I mean,
this is very important, you know, and unless we give this a really good airing, it could set a precedent, you know, unless we get it all right. We have been asked to discuss your integrity, which is very embarrassing, and we now know you as a chairman for over 12 years. So it is very, very embarrassing.
Sorry, this should have been on.
You made a mistake.
I made a mistake, but I apologise there and then. So, I've lost the train of thought now. And I think I've lost what I was about to say to our legal officer. You haven't mentioned to me how many days later was the latest one of those people who made a mistake? Or were they all at the meeting when they realised?
If we're talking about the circumstances of when I've seen mistakes made, they were generally at the meeting. Generally at Chairman, the monitoring officer's indicated she would like to speak.
yes, sure. If I can bring in our monitoring officer to respond.
I'm not sure if you noticed, or even if you've looked at Periscope, what actually happened. Okay, so what actually happened was that the head of development management called me, or she indicated me to come over because obviously she knew something was wrong. I spoke to Councillor Wilson for about 31 seconds, I counted on Periscope, and he was extremely distressed about, he indicated me sincere distress that he'd made an error. He didn't actually say, I don't think, he said, I have made a mistake, but it was very obvious from talking to him that he had. And no, he didn't say so, but as the legal advisor just said, Sean O'Connor, it's just one of those, hindsight is a wonderful thing. But I can confirm that for those 31 seconds, we discussed, Councillor Wilson and I, his very sincere regret at the vote that he had actually made.
Okay. I'm going to bring in our head of planning before we go to a vote on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. Councillor Stretton made a reference in her speech, which I think Councillor Smith picked up, regarding the skill set of council. Obviously, the planning authority instructed council in this instance, which is something that I did myself. And the skill set of council, Chairman, in my opinion, is to consider the evidence and to advise their client based on the evidence that they see. I asked council to review the Periscope recording before I had a further conversation with him. Now, the paragraph that I think Councillor Mrs Hunt picked out and took exception to was what council considered to be the evidence, having reviewed the Periscope recording himself. In my view, Chairman, the circumstances of another meeting are not relevant. Either the panel, as Sean's indicated, favour your position that you made a mistake, which I sincerely believe you did, or they don't. And thank you for allowing me the chance to speak.
Okay. Although Councillor Claire Stretton did indicate not to rescind the decision, that was not actually seconded. Who? Oh, I didn't actually hear you say second.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I did second it because I feel I've been put in a very difficult position, one that I do not wish to,
sorry,
and I don't know the timeline of when it was registered as an error. And that is the problem. I know you spoke to the officer, but nobody knew that it was an error. I mean, the first I knew about it was about 4 days later, and I think that's too long a timeline lapse.
Okay, I'm bringing in our head of planning because it all depends on when that motion was seconded. So, as our head of planning can verify.
Sorry, I'm actually going to answer Councillor Mrs Hunt's question, because as soon as the Chairman cast his vote on the 17th of December, I have to say I very impertinently asked him whether he had intended to cast his vote in that way. And the look on his face when he turned to me, and I was sat on the other side of him, indicated to me, as the monitoring officer has said, that I can't describe it. He was dazed, confused, actually absolutely didn't know what had just happened. And following the meeting, I can confirm, as the monitoring officer has said, and the Chairman, we had a conversation in this room, and I left the building on that night in the sure knowledge that the Chairman had voted erroneously. Now, I accept that that has taken a while to come before this panel, but for the planning authority's position, then that was known on the day of the meeting. Just turning, Chairman, to the point you asked me to clarify for you, as I have been making my own notes, Councillor Hunt did second the motion from Councillor Stretton, but it was after Councillor Kellaway and Love had proposed and seconded the motion for officer recommendation. I'm sure the clerk will confirm. Thank you, Chair.
So, with that confirmation, the motion that's on the table is the one that has been moved by Councillor Kellaway for the officer recommendation as listed on page 15 of your panel agenda reports, and that has been seconded by Councillor Love. No. Councillor Claire Stretton, we're in the middle of the vote for the motion. If you wish to, please.
I just wanted to ask a question, if I may, of our officers. If they were so convinced and so concerned about it at the time, before we moved on to the next item on the agenda, why did they not advise the Chairman that he needed to make it public and deal with it? If we dealt with it at the time, we would not be in the situation we are now. Thank you.
I'll bring in Sean, our legal officer, to respond to you on that, because it is clear what took place.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I may have touched on this earlier. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we can all look back and think, why didn't we should have done this. At the time the the officers were aware of the issue, members of the public were leaving. The members of the panel were walking around the room. That's all available on Periscope. I think it would have been wrong for us to wait for the public to leave and then have a second vote. I think that would have looked terrible for the authority. This isn't an ideal situation, and we're talking about the least worst way of dealing with it, and this is the least worst way of dealing with this issue. Thank you, Chairman.
So the motion that's been put, that was duly seconded first, is the motion by Councillor Kellaway for the officer recommendation, and that was duly seconded by Councillor Love. So that is the motion that we have to vote on first, and I know Sean, our legal officer, just wishes to come in on that before we take a name vote.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm talking far too much on this item. I just want to make sure that we know exactly what we're voting for. I'll try to get it right this time. If you vote for, then you are voting to revoke or rescind the decision in December. So for means rescinding the decision. This means that we will then move on to item 5. So if you vote for, that means we move to item 5. If you vote against, that means that you believe that the decision in December stands, and then the matter will be refused. So we will move to item 5 only if you vote for. If you vote against, then this is the only item we'll consider tonight. Thank you, Chairman.
If I can ask our clerk to take a name vote, please.
Councillor Bullock.
Could you say exactly what you want for or against what?
Councillor Bullock, if it's for, you're voting to cancel the December decision. So that means